Joining us on the biggest story tonight, Dr. Swamy, thank you for joining us. Delimitation in Jammu and Kashmir, at least when we look at it in detail, Dr. Swamy, the way we understand it, this new generation understands it, there is a lot of mismatch in the way Jammu and Kashmir is represented. Many people feel that Kashmir and Kashmiri political parties or the dynasts in Kashmir have for the longest time been able to rule Kashmir because they did not allow delimitation, because the historical wrongs could not be corrected.
Yes.
In your view, Dr. Swamy, for the new Jammu and Kashmir, for the new generation in Jammu and Kashmir, what will it mean if it comes in? Dr. Subramanian Swamy on the biggest story tonight.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that delimitation is required every 10 years. And in Kashmir, from 2002, nothing has happened. Almost 20 years are over. And therefore, it's a mandatory requirement. And the Election Commission, both under the Constitution, articles of the Constitution 324, and as well as the Representative People's Act, which applies to the whole of Jammu Kashmir, they have to do it. The political authority was not there. It's good that the new Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, has taken this as a first initiative. We all support it and welcome it. And what it means is that the seats distribution will be on the basis, between the Valley and Jammu particularly, will be based on the basis of population. And that means the Jammu strength will rise and the Valley strength will go down. Even in the Valley, the elections are generally held peaceful, except for what is popularly called as 2.5 districts out of the 14 districts. So this is something that would be welcomed by everybody, because one man, one vote means constituency must represent the population and not the area. And that is why the mistake has happened in the so far, and the BJP government is rectifying that.
Now, many communities in Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Swamy, are not represented. The Gujars, the Bakarwals and the Gadis, yes, I think they make up around roughly
yes,
about 11%. Now, if delimitation comes through, now what
yes,
is your understanding
absolutely,
of politically the kind of impact it can have, Dr. Swamy?
It will impact will be that the troublemakers of a couple of districts of the Valley will not be able to sort of hold the state to ransom, and the representation of the Valley will go down. And consequently, we think that this will enable patriotic elements to get a better voice in the assembly, and then thereafter reflect the true opinions instead of this over-representation of the section of the Valley, which has been creating the impression that the whole of the Kashmir is on fire, when it is not at all. It's only 2.5 districts. And therefore, I think it will be a very salutary step towards restoring a sense of proportion as to what is this the disturbance in Kashmir and what is the separatist elements' real strength, which is quite negligible in the whole state.
You know, many people, especially Mehbooba Mufti, has responded to this. I think Omar Abdullah and his party are very closely watching what happens. But why do you think they are wary? Now, the most rudimentary question on everyone's mind, Dr. Swamy, is whether, you know, because when these parties, the way they look at it, they are fearing that they may lose hold of the Chief Minister's chair. To put it plainly, they feel a Hindu Chief Minister could come on that seat, or at least that's the way this debate is being looked at. What is your response to them?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the Hindu Chief Minister. After all, we have had Muslim Chief Ministers in Maharashtra, where population of Muslims is less than 10%. We have had Muslim Chief Ministers in Bihar. So, I mean, to say that you can't have a Hindu Chief Minister in a place where I don't know quite whether it's a Muslim majority state, but it's certainly where, much higher proportion than other places. And consequently, first of all, we want to demolish this thing that only a Muslim can be Chief Minister of Kashmir, Jammu Kashmir, and we want to reflect it through the elections. What will happen for Mehbooba is that all this redistricting that will take place will mean that Hindu populations will get a better representation, and we may in fact be able to enable the Kashmiri Pandits who have been driven out, they also to cast their vote in Kashmir.
Dr. Swamy, what is your hunch? Because you are a part of the BJP, you're a parliamentarian. What are you hearing? Are you hearing that this government will push through and ensure that delimitation happens? Because like you mentioned earlier, there was an attempt to block it and they did it successfully in the early 2000s. But will this government push it through this time?
Well, they must, because the manifesto says we'll remove Article 35 and 35A and the 370. So this would be a very major dilution of 370. We have this because the assembly becomes much more well represented, and certainly the Hindu population of Jammu and the Buddhist population of Ladakh will be able to have a much greater voice, particularly Jammu, which has been a neglected area of the Jammu Kashmir state. They will have a bigger voice in the assembly, and therefore the national character and the national population dimensions of the rest of India will be reflected more accurately in Kashmir, and therefore its integration will become much easier. So I think the government of India is bound to do it, and because we have committed to removing 370, and this is a very good step towards that end.
Okay, so one last question. You mentioned, of course, that this could be the first step. Is that your reading, that this is the first step? And like you said in the manifesto, there's Article 370 and 35A. Yes. So in your reading, like everybody is reading this evening, in your view, do you think this is the first step towards ensuring that the manifesto promises are delivered?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Article 370, you know that when it was brought in, the Constitution Committee, Amendments Committee Chairman was Ambedkar. And when he was asked by Sheikh Abdullah to please introduce this amendment, he said, "What do you think, I'm a traitor? I will never do it." And in the end, Ambedkar refused to move it, and they had to bring in Gopalswamy Iyengar to move the resolution, and a personal plea from Sardar Patel, because it was going to be voted out. There was never anybody for this 370, and this 370 is an obnoxious article which can be removed by just a presidential notification. It doesn't even need the vote of the parliament. And so it's about time we abolished it, and this is the first step, and I think the government cannot go back on that.
Dr. Swamy, thank you for joining us on The Biggest Story tonight. I think for a lot of people who are trying to make sense of delimitation and what this would mean politically, just to put it in short, Dr. Swamy has elaborated every aspect of what you can expect if it goes through. Essentially, if the delimitation process happens in Kashmir, Kashmiri political parties, namely Mehbooba Mufti and Omar Abdullah, may no longer be the power centers in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which, by the way, needs more representation from the many people and many tribes who have been underrepresented for the longest time because they were blocked by a few parties in Delhi, and of course they themselves made sure that it was blocked. Dr. Swamy, thank you for speaking to us.